Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune, and we're here to talk about OU, college football, college basketball, all things news in the world of college sports right now because it is the off season. There is transfer portal news. There is a junior day coming up, and Nick Saban in Alabama. I mean, it happened on Wednesday, Parker, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. We're recording this on a Friday morning. I expect something to be done by today or tomorrow, just from everything. It sounds like Caden DeBoer, dude, is the guy that's going to be the.
That's kind of where the unofficial signs are pointing at the moment.
It's a good hire.
It would be a great hire, and I have a special place in my heart for any South Dakotans that make it to the big stage and succeed, and that's what Kalen DeBoer is. He's a native of Millbank, South Dakota, so that's where all of my family has its origin. Fun to see another one, along with Josh Heupel, rise to the top in the SEC as a head coach. So, yeah, I think Kalen DeBoer would be a good hire. I mean, he's won everywhere he's been. He's 104-12 as a head coach, which is
I was about to say
just about as good as it gets, man.
Insane.
Like he is, that is bonkers to think about, especially with how many different places he's been as a head coach. Sioux Falls, Fresno State, now Washington. I mean, it's not as if you're inheriting a ready-made winning situation whenever you take a new job either. So to have 12 career losses as a head coach against 104 victories, yeah, that'd be a good hire for Alabama. But before we get any further, a reminder that this episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. Cheers to the new year from our friends at Manscaped, because your resolutions shouldn't be the only things that are well kept. 2024 is the time for new heights, new opportunities, and a new look for your Times Square balls. Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Trusted by over 10 million men worldwide, now is your time to get a grip on your grooming with our exclusive offer. Introducing the MVP of 2024, Manscaped's 5th generation lawnmower in the Manscaped Performance Package 5.0. In this grooming kit, you get the trusted lawnmower, Manscaped's ear and nose hair trimmer, and essential aftercare products with the Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. Let's face it, resolutions might come and go, but a well-groomed you is here to stay, thanks to Manscaped. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code OU Insider at manscaped.com, because nothing says Happy New Year like a deal that leaves your balls and your budget feeling refreshed. Embrace a new you, and definitely embrace a new trimmer, courtesy of Manscaped. Now, Brandon, let me share this anecdote, because for those watching on the YouTube side, they will obviously notice that I am not up against my typical background. I'm not in my home studio. That's because I made the trip home to Nebraska to do a very belated Christmas with my folks, and I made the most egregious faux pas that I have ever made as a traveler. I packed a bag for the trip, got up here last night, and realized I had forgotten the bag, which contained
your underwear,
everything, clothes, toiletries, basically everything except my laptop, which was in my backpack along with a couple other work-related things that I just keep in there. So I was like, shoot, man, I'm not going to have a microphone to do this podcast on. I'm going to have to do it with AirPods, and I'm going to sound like I'm talking into a tin can. But thankfully, I realized shortly thereafter that I did pack my microphone with my laptop as opposed to with all of my other belongings in my travel bag. So I'm up here for the next 3 days. Gonna have to figure out what I'm wearing for the next 3 days. That'll be the task at hand after we get done with this podcast this morning. But at least I have a microphone. At least my audio sounds half decent.
So for people that know, he's in Nebraska, which means it's snowing, which means it's freezing. It's cold where we're at right now. And for those recruits and everybody that, the SEC and Oklahoma and all that are watching this, let's get this thing straight real quick. This weather that we have out here in Oklahoma right now, this is not Oklahoma weather. This is this is like 50 degrees lower than the normal average here, 40 degrees or whatever. It's freaking cold, and brought like Arctic air throughout the whole US, which is just crazy that even the state of Texas is like freezing its took us off right now. So it's wild times here in as 2024 starts as weather-wise, and it's going to last for like a week, Parker. Like a week. This is not right. It's not normal. And my body feels like my shoulder is like I feel it in my neck, my shoulder, my jaw, dude. It hurts so bad, dude. When you get older, you'll understand. I should have had surgery on this right shoulder. I dislocated it 7 times in football, and they're like, "You need to have surgery." Never did. This is regrets right now. Is anytime the weather drops like this, it feels like death. What'd you say? You're
The
muted,
pain
buddy.
of regret.
Yeah, the pain is very regretful right now. All right. So Nick Saban, Alabama. Nick Saban went into work yesterday. He retired and he goes into work because he's helping
Are you actually
Alabama.
retired if you go into work?
And he was at work, like he said, like at 7:30 in the morning. So um it sounds to me like he's going to stay kind of like Mac Brown did whenever he, left Texas, where he was in. Bob Stoops. Same thing Bob Stoops does. Bob Stoops
Yep.
works at the University of Oklahoma as kind of I guess a consultant, I guess, for the athletic department. Um, and I guess that's what Saban's going to do. But Saban also has ambitions, kind of like Bob Stoops, where Bob went into, uh, he went into broadcasting, right? And he did a really good job. The only reason why he got out of it is because I guess he missed his kids' games, and it got in the way. So
Yeah.
I don't think he
Well, and he
really
started
enjoyed that
coaching the
part.
Renegades too.
Right, but that's spring. But like in the fall, it was more he was having to watch like the OU Texas game from uh Iowa City, Iowa, if I remember correctly. And there's that thing where he's like cheering on stage, watching them come back and
Yeah,
getting
I
all
would have hated
excited.
to have been in Iowa City, Iowa on October 9th, 2021.
Yeah, so I mean, that kind of you could kind of see the writing on the wall there. But I think once Drake gets into, I think you could see Bob going back into that world. I think him and Saban, if you could get him and Saban to be just regulars on College Game Day, that would be a win-win
I
for
tweeted
ESPN.
it. I want a version of the Manning cast that just features Nick Saban and Bill Belichick. That would be the most low
But is
energy, but
Belichick
also
done?
most insightful broadcast imaginable. Because
Have
those
you?
dudes would just nerd out on football for 3.5
Oh,
hours.
have you watched the HBO special, the documentary, the Belichick and Saban? You
No,
can
I haven't.
probably YouTube it, or you can just go to Amazon Prime and rent it for like $3, and it's worth the money. I've watched it probably 20 times just because I love the little anecdotes that Saban brings out, like his little quibs, like, and I send it to my kids all the time, and like little things about, doing what's right in football or school or life and stuff like that. He has like these great life anecdotes that he always says in quotes that are just they're great. And even for us as adults to live by. So I always put him in my notes and stuff like that when he says stuff. I'm like, oh, that hits home. Um, so yeah, I would love to see that type of podcast with him. I just think college football lost obviously a legend, but at the same time they lost its leader. Um, when Saban speaks, no matter what the topic is, everybody listens. It doesn't matter what it's about, they listen because what he's going to say is thoughtful. What he's going to say is makes you, the person listening, think about everything he's talking about in whatever the situation is, whether it's college football, life, whatever. I think that's a dying breed in college football because of where the sport's headed. And it's headed to more of a professional kind of it. it does have a juxtaposition right now between college and NFL. You know what I mean? With the NIL, with you're probably leaning towards a commissioner and a players union at some point. Like there's a lot that's going to happen here, and I don't think it's necessarily going to ruin college football, but I think you have to have somebody that is out in the forefront trying to guide it, and I think maybe that's another area where Nick Saban and a Bob Stoops, like the old heads that were around during the kind of the switch over as the sport was changing in the late 2010s to 2020s. You need those types, right? That can guide the next generation of college football in a way that where it's organized and not ran by the idiots at the NCAA. And to me, I think Saban is a perfect fit. I think Stoops would be a perfect. I think if you could have like a batch of commissioners or a committee, don't you think those two would be great at it? Just leading the sport in the right direction. They're not gonna nix NIL. They're not gonna, but I think it needs controlled. Because Saban even came out yesterday and said that was part of the reason why he left, was everything was just going haywire. Like he got on there, I guess, with Reese Davis and just said his piece. Did you watch that?
I did not watch that. No, I was on the road at that point. But look, it's pretty clear that Saban's retirement had to do with a multiplicity of things, right? And there wasn't. I wouldn't say there was one main cause, but obviously he'd made it evident in the past that he was not pleased with the direction of college football. I mean, the one thing I always respected about Nick Saban was that he never got into useless beefs or feuds, whether publicly or behind closed doors.
Except for Jimbo.
And yet, towards the end, he decided to come for Jimbo's neck over the class that A&M bought. And they did. I thought it was hilarious. Jimbo did that interview a couple weeks ago where he was trying to blame sliced bread for all of it. Like, seriously? Seriously, that's where you're going to cast the blame for all of this? College football changed on a lie. No. College football changed because you and your staff bought an entire recruiting class at Texas A&M. And then it became keeping up with the Joneses. So there's that. But hey, Oklahoma got a transfer portal quarterback last night.
They did. Well,
it was obviously anticipated, but it happened.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Casey Thompson, real quickly on the Saban thing before we go, just one more thing on that. Do you think it's Caden DeBoer? Caden DeBoer is
Kalen DeBoer.
Kalen DeBoer. I always say Caden because my kid's name's Caden. Kalen DeBoer. Gosh dang it. I keep doing that all over and over. Or do you think there's zero chance Dabo gets the job or is up for the job? Like zero chance.
I think there is zero chance. Yes. I think that it's become quite clear that the one guy that Alabama fans do not want hired is Dabo Swinney. I don't know why,
because he fell off the last few years, and
I would assume that has a lot to do with it. I think he's probably reached his zenith as a coach, and he's not super. How do I phrase this?
He's not flexible. He doesn't want to change.
He's not willing to adapt.
Yeah,
I think that's
adapt or die.
Clear. He's not willing to adapt, and yes, adapt or die has become the mantra in college football. And Dabo is very set in his ways, and it's worked in the past, but that was pre-NIL, right? And Clemson post-NIL has not had as much success. Well, I should say Clemson post-portal hasn't had as much success because that's really been the thing, more so than NIL, that Dabo has been averse to using is the transfer portal.
Yeah, and again, I guess on the OU front, right? Like, I think the best scenario if you're Oklahoma and you want to keep the staff as is Kalen DeBoer gets the job, because I don't know how or who they would hire at Washington that would have a ton of connections that would want to come grab, or that anybody on the OU staff would be willing to just be like, yeah, I'm going to leave Oklahoma to go coach at Washington. Like, and that's not a slight at Washington, but if you go look at the recruiting classes the last few years, if it wasn't for Kalen DeBoer and his ability to develop talent, and bring in transfer portal guys with him. When he arrived, Washington is still struggling. And that's the difference. Now he's potentially going to Alabama, and I say potential because it seems like that's where everything seems to be leaning at this juncture. Like, I don't. Is there any other names that we should be looking at that you think about? And I guess Kalen DeBoer could go and hire an OU staffer, I guess, at Alabama if that was the case. But does he not just bring his staff with him from Washington that was so successful? I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go about that. I just don't know how. And if there's like a 6 degree of separation between him and a few staffers at OU, I just don't know that there's, I'm sure there is, but who, like
Yeah.
this might be the best case scenario for OU in the long run as far as like keeping your job, right?
Well,
And
yes, and I think if you're OU and you have so many staffers with ties to the Southeast and guys that have worked at places like Alabama and Clemson in the past, right? What you want to minimize turnover at your institution is you want Alabama to hire somebody like Kalen DeBoer, who has no obvious connections to anybody on staff and would probably assemble a staff with, well, a staff of his own guys in all likelihood.
he doesn't have any South connections. That's the weird part about this. Last
Exactly.
time they
And
did that,
that's,
Mark Price, wasn't it Mark Price they hired or Mike Price or whatever that fell through? Like did not do well.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing I'm curious about with DeBoer, which is because like I want to just hand the job to DeBoer because it seems like the obvious choice, but do they make a strong run at Mike Norvell because he knows the territory better and has recruited it better? I think that's
That's the situation you look at and you're like, okay, well, he might go after a few Oklahoma guys because there
well,
is a
because
he played against them, he coached against them, like
yeah,
at
and
Clemson.
then
He understands their willingness and their ability to recruit, but does he go then that's where it gets interesting as well because Florida State then becomes open, right? And then
correct, yeah, and it's just a constant
oh,
trickle down effect. Yeah,
that
but
that's
hey,
the crazy part.
Casey Thompson is a Sooner at long
Yeah,
last.
we'll have an interview with him here in a few days. He and I have been discussing the times. Obviously, it's a good pickup for Oklahoma. He's going to add depth. He's going to add experience. He's going to be able to help them. Look, there's a lot of people, Parker, that some people have issues with the signing and the bringing in of Casey Thompson because it's year 7. They're like, what is the purpose of that? He hasn't done this and that. Look, what are you talking about? When he's been healthy, he's been damn good. And nobody's saying he's like the second coming of Peyton Manning or Patrick Mahomes or anything like that, but he threw for like 500 yards against OU in the Red River rivalry, right? Like in 2021. He's had plenty of games where he's been very successful. He played really well in the 2020 Alamo Bowl. Like there's a lot of things that you go back and you look at Casey Thompson and you're like, when he's healthy, he's good. Like he's a good quarterback. And so you bring in a guy that is 23, 24 years old, right? And you add him to a quarterback room that has 19-year-old Jackson Arnold, 18-year-old Michael Hawkins, 18-year-old Brennan Zurbrugg. And then you've got Dave Booty, obviously General Booty, and he's what, 22? So,
You know
but
what's wild,
Booty,
man, is I had to fact check this because somebody brought it up and I was like, is that true? Casey Thompson's older than I am, Brandon. Casey
he's
Thompson
24,
turns
right?
26 in October. He turns
Is that true?
26 midseason. Yes.
No way.
Uh-huh.
I've known that kid since he was like 10. What?
Been that long. You're old.
Wow. Like, and just so people understand that, like, like there is a reason why we knew about this a long time. Okay, Parker, it's Casey and I's dad, Charles Thompson, used to do radio together for like 3 years. So we became very good friends. Casey is one of the original trainers of my kids at quarterback. So like this dates back years. And so we've been privy to this for a while. It's just been kind of one of those deals where we had to play naive, I guess, and play, oh, where's he gonna go? Or what if this happens or this happens? And there was a point, Parker, that this thing almost fell through after he got in the portal. I want people to understand that, like, this thing, they made it work. They made it work. Everything worked out. And I think it's such a good, and take my bias out of this, because I will readily admit my relationship with that family and everything. I'm biased. Okay. I'm biased on that. But he understands how to prepare for football games. He understands how to make sure and help Jackson and those other young guys. He's going to be able to teach them the day-to-day grind and the process of college football. And he's been through everything you can imagine in the world of college football. So he understands it at like almost a coach's level. And you have to understand his dad, and being around his dad and his brother, he understands football better than he wants to be a coach. And there's a reason why. Like Oklahoma's like, yes, come in here. Like, this is like just the perfect fit for everything. And he's going to compete for the starting job. Like, he's not coming in with the idea of, oh, I'm just going to hand it over type deal. He understands it's Jackson's team. He is not going to come in and say, I'm going to beat Jackson out. That is not something they're going to do. And it's not something they've come in with that thought. If it happens, it happens. But I don't think they believe that there is, like, it's been made clear to them, Parker, that this is Jackson Arnold's team. So they came into this understanding that, and he has a torn ACL. They tore game 3 last year. He will be able to go through spring ball. Everybody says always not. He's not going to be ready till summer. He's going through spring ball. The only thing he can't do is scrimmage and live team action, which is okay. He can go through everything. He can do all the plays, walkthroughs, and all that type of stuff. Understand the playbook, help in the film room, help in the weight room. He's going to rehab. That's where this whole thing works out for Oklahoma, because then he comes in the fall and he starts to compete for that backup job, and then, try to get that starting job if he gets going well enough. But at the end of the day, they understand this is Jackson Arnold's team. Jackson Arnold is 99.9% going to be the starter next year. Like, there's a 0.1% chance that he's not the starter going into game 1 next year. So, but to have, if you're going to the SEC, Parker, and I want your thoughts on this, would you rather have somebody that has that much experience backing up Jackson Arnold? If let's say you're in the plains, down there in the plains in Auburn, right? And heaven forbid, knock on wood, Jackson gets nicked up in the third quarter. Who would you rather throw in there, a true freshman or somebody that has 6 years of experience, that's been through it all?
Well, as things stand right now, I think the obvious answer is you would rather have a guy that's been through the fire. I think.
Thank you.
End of the day, there's no downside, and we've talked about it before. There's no downside to bringing in Casey Thompson, especially because he doesn't occupy a scholarship spot. And you know what? If he winds up QB2 after fall camp, great. You got a stable, experienced option should Arnold go down. And guess what? If he gets beat out for that QB2 role by Michael Hawkins or Brendan Zurbrugg, well, that right off the bat, Michael Hawkins and or Brendan Zurbrugg are better and more capable of handling the offense at Oklahoma than a guy who led the Big 12 in touchdown passes in 2021. So that speaks very highly of them. And Casey Thompson, as you mentioned, is still a valuable addition because he brings additional wisdom and experience and insight to what is a very young room. So if this is a guy that takes up a scholarship, I understand why some folks might be apprehensive or question the move. Because it doesn't take up a scholarship, I cannot fathom why anyone would have beef with Casey Thompson being an Oklahoma Sooner. I think it's going to be good for Seth Luttrell. I think it's going to be good for Jackson Arnold. I think it's going to be good for Hawkins and Zerbrug. I think it's going to be good for Oklahoma.
Yeah. Just it's a win-win all the way around. And like he's coming home. Like if you don't think this doesn't mean something to them, they announced it on January 11th at 6 p.m. And if you understand it, if you go back and you look at my tweet, they made that very clear to me. Everybody was like, "Oh, they're going to announce at 3:30, 4:30." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. No." I talked to them previously, and there's a reason why I said 72 hours on Monday, right? Like there was a reason why we Monday evening because and it was like around that 6 p.m. So they announced his brother wore number 1 at Oklahoma. Casey's wearing number 11. His dad wore number 6. 1:11, 6 p.m. There's a reason they announced it when they announced it and how they announced it because it's meaningful to them. And it has to do with the university, their love for the university, their love for each other, and the love for the fact that all 3 of the Thompsons have quarterbacked at the University of Oklahoma. That is freaking awesome. That is awesome. The kid is coming home. He is so excited about this. And you're going to get to see this when I do the interview. Everybody that's watching this, when I do the interview with Casey, like I've been talking to him throughout this whole process and even before he got in the portal about just how they wanted to operate this whole idea. And so like they've had this in their mind as a possibility for a long time. And it's something they wanted to put into motion. Probably around, when was it? It was around the beginning of December that they started really trying to put this in motion or talk about putting it in motion. And obviously they, just to make things clear, like, oh, you had no idea this was happening until he entered the portal. And then when he entered the portal, it just became obvious whenever they started to connect and communicate. So it just was a really good, it's just a really good addition for OU. I mean, like you can't, they may have one of the best backups in college football, Parker. Like, honestly, like when you look at his stats and you look at everything he's been through, how many programs have a guy that's thrown for 6,000 yards, 52 touchdowns as a potential backup?
Yeah, not many. I mean, he's easily one of the most experienced backups in the entire country, regardless of competition level. Like you will not find very many backups nationwide that have done as much on the football field at the collegiate level as Casey Thompson has. So
it's a great, and I think OU fans should like it too because it's just it's a cool story.
Well,
and I'm excited for the video when we do.
I'll tell you what OU fans don't like, Brandon. Terrence Ferguson going to Florida State.
God, don't.
Holy
Why
smokes,
you had to go
man.
there?
Well, I mean, we were going to have to go there at some point. We might as well get there.
Okay, before you open up real quick, let me say this piece. I wrote this. Did you read what I wrote on the board last night? Did you read the stats that I wrote for the people that are hating on Bill Bedenbaugh? Everybody's like, well, he hasn't recruited very well.
Which is like a kid like that picks Florida State, and your first reaction is to blame Bill Bedenbaugh.
Okay.
It's very obvious why the kid picked Florida State, and it has nothing to do with Bill Bedenbaugh. None whatsoever.
Correct. So here is what I put last night. And I want you to dive in on this.
Okay.
I'm trying to find it real quick because so when you look at everything that Bill Bedenbaugh has done throughout, here it is right here. Oh, this is so glorious. For everybody that says he hasn't recruited well in the last 3 or 4 years, I'm going to squash that for you very quickly. And they're like, well, he hasn't done well in the portal. Well, he hasn't done well in high school. It's like they bounce back and forth once you prove them wrong in this situation. So in 2022, Parker, he signed 2 top 250 offensive tackles.
Jake Taylor,
Jake
Jacob
Sexton.
Sexton.
Jacob Sexton. His transfer portal pickup in 2022. Tyler Guyton and McCade Matwire.
Both multi-year starters at Oklahoma.
And one is going to be a first-round draft pick.
That is true. Okay, continue.
2023. Yes, it sucks. Caden Green left. Caden Green did not leave because Caden Green wanted to leave.
And Caden Green also didn't leave because of Bill Bedenbaugh.
And he did not leave because of Bill Bedenbaugh. Caden Green left because of people around him making him leave. And we'll go from there. And people go, well, the NIL. No, OU offered more than anybody. But when people around him are pissed off about other situations, nothing you can do about that. That was a lose-lose situation for Oklahoma. But on top of that, 4-star Josh Bates, the number 1 center in the country. 4-star Logan Hallen, one of the top offensive tackles in the country. 4-star Heath Ozida, one of the top offensive guards in the country. Transfer portal. Troy Everett, Walter Rouse, Caleb Schaefer. All contributed last year.
Rouse was the only guy that was a starter, at least on a full-time basis.
Right, but Troy Everett's going to end up starting potentially in 2024 at center.
Yep.
He was one of the top. He was a freshman all-conference, freshman all-American. Like, there's a lot of things. You look at that and you're like, that's a good pickup, right? 2024.
Oh, boy.
This is where it gets even better. This is the funniest one. Eddie Perry-Louis is in 29th overall player in the country, according to Rivals, which puts him in 5-star. Yes, puts him in 5-star range.
Yep.
BJ Brooks is going to skyrocket, potentially top 100 player in the country when it's all said and done.
Yeah,
he could vie for the top offensive guard when it's all said and done. So Oklahoma may have the number 1 and number 2 offensive guards when it's all said and done. Daniel Akinkumi is probably going to get a 4-star after what he did at the Under Armour camp, or close to it. Close to it. He could be a very high 3-star. Either way, you talk to anybody that's watched that guy, and they're like, that is impressive that he's never gone against talent like that, and he came in and he did what he did. Everybody expected him to get blown out, and he handled his own. They said he's super raw, he's super long, and even a source that we talked to in December, Parker, you and I were talking right there, and he looked right at us, and the source is as good as it gets. And he said, the guy that's going to surprise everybody is Daniel Akinkumi. And 3 weeks later, the guy that surprised everybody was Daniel Akinkumi.
Yep.
The guy called it.
Yep.
The guy called it, and he said when he gets to Oklahoma, he's going to do the same thing. Then you have 4-star Isaiah Autry, and you have 3-star Josh Sosa. Both those guys, super raw, super athletic, super long for their position.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Sosa's a guard, but he has the potential to slide out if he needs to and play tackle. Transfer portal. Former freshman All-American Fabichi Nuewu. Longtime starter at Michigan State, at offensive tackle, Spencer Brown. Both in the top 150 transfers in the country, mind you. And Michael Tarquin, who is in the top 250 transfers in the country. So, how has he not recruited well and brought in people?
And look, the way I approach it, the way I gauge it, Brandon, and some people view this as an overly simplistic way to look at things, but I think if your product year in and year out is top shelf or close to it, does it really matter what the recruiting rankings say about the guys you're getting? Bill Bedenbaugh gets the guys that are good for Bill Bedenbaugh, and the guys that buy in at Oklahoma under Bill Bedenbaugh are guys that excel and oftentimes make a ton of money in the NFL, right? We've talked about it. Cody Ford was a 3-star. Orlando Brown was a 3-star. Ben Powers was a 2-star. I mean, you can go on down the list, and there's guys on top of guys. Anton Harrison was, I think, the 4th highest ranked offensive lineman that Oklahoma landed in the 2020 class, and he ended up a first-round pick. So Bill gets the guys that Bill likes. And the guys that Bill likes, the guys that forge their way to the top of the depth chart, they typically have a ton of success. And yeah, you get guys that wash out, but guess what? When you're signing 4 or 5 offensive linemen a year, in most cases, not all of them can see the field. Not all of them will see the field. And so you expect, at a position like offensive line, you expect a pretty high bust rate. But I think that A would be the case regardless of who the coach is. And B, I think when you look at the percentage of guys that Bill has sent to the NFL over the years, it becomes pretty clear that he's doing a better job. There's a reason why the director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, has said publicly many times, no one develops like Bill Bedenbaugh in Oklahoma. So with that in mind, Terrence Ferguson not coming to Oklahoma, going to Florida State instead. We're still waiting on the decision from Zalance Hurd. Look, everything you need to know about the Hurd situation is posted up at ouinsider.com. Suffice it to say that, and I know what some of the comments are going to be, because the reality with how Oklahoma has approached these recruitments, the way they have to approach it is, well, you can't fight fire with fire, financially, at least, because as I've said before, if folks knew how much money there was on the table elsewhere for Ferguson and Hurd, I think they would safely conclude, yeah, there's no world in which Oklahoma should pay that much for a single offensive lineman. So
go ahead, man. Yeah.
What you're selling is development. What you're selling is Bill Bedenbaugh's resume. What you're selling is his penchant for putting guys in the league and trying to convince these kids that they're better off making a long-term play than a short-term one. And then the comment that you get is always, well, so what you're saying is if this kid commits to Oklahoma, it's all because of Bill Bedenbaugh. And if this kid doesn't commit to Oklahoma, it has nothing to do with Bill Bedenbaugh. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean,
that's not obfuscating the truth in any capacity. That is exactly what I'm saying, because that's exactly what it boils down to.
So, Sooner P, I'm calling you out because you've been really good, and he's on our message board. He's been really good about talking and debating here with me on this whole Ferguson deal. And he said, well, you keep saying the big dogs aren't throwing around money, just to throw around money to get these type of guys like Terrence Ferguson. And they said, well, big dogs don't have to. Big dogs like Georgia have 6 scholarship O-line on campus, only have 6 scholarship, like that type of stuff. And I get where he's coming from. And I get, Senator P, I get where you're coming from on this. The issue I have with that is, again, the big dogs are going to say this. I think Georgia, Alabama, everybody, there's a reason why Alabama said, go try to get what you can get, man, because we're not paying you that BS. And you're not worth it. You got 11 appearances in 1 start, and fans are acting like, oh, you just threw away Lane Johnson or Trent Williams. Like they didn't want to pay it for them. Like if there was a portal guy in there that was that good, OU's probably going to pay a significant amount of money for them. That's just the facts. OU's been willing to pay and play ball, Parker, with players they feel are worthy of that. And that they feel that when they come into the locker room, the players aren't going to look like, well, you just got that money because you were in the portal. You didn't really prove anything before you got here. And that's where, like, you look at Burks, for example, right? He's been a stud at Purdue. He's going to walk in and everybody's going to go, okay, yeah, well, he was all Big Ten. Like, I get it. Like, he was one of the top receivers in the portal. Totally get it. His performance on the field, you totally understand why he's getting what he's getting. You look at, trying to think of some other guys over the years, Bothroyd last year, right? Juan Morris, Tyler Guyton, like those type of guys come in and they're instant contributors, right? And they've been proven commodities elsewhere. And so when they come in, Eric Gray, like these are players that have proven themselves at previous stops. And if they're getting some sort of NIL, the teammates in the locker room can look at it and point and go, okay, well, I get it. Like this guy's going to come in and help us right there. Terrence Ferguson, you can't look at that and go, you're going to pay him what? He had 11 appearances in 1 start in 3 years.
Well,
no.
And there was a member that said that, and look, for many reasons, which I think most people understand, a few do not, but there's a time and a place to explain all of it. and this is not the time or place. But basically, what I will say is that my personal philosophy and our philosophy is, well, we're not in the business of disclosing what the numbers are that are getting thrown out for these kids, because that can have an adverse effect in a number of ways. Again, there's a lot to unpack there. But there was a member on our board that asked, hey, is it true that I guess he had heard a rumor somewhere. Hey, is it true that the number that Zalance Hurd would be commanding would be what Caden Green and Walter Rouse were making combined? And I said,
Yes.
yeah, that wouldn't be far from the truth at all. And so that puts it into perspective. What you would have is, you would have, if Oklahoma were willing to go to bat on the same level as Tennessee and Ole Miss in the NIL department, what you would have is a sophomore offensive tackle who has made one start in his collegiate career. And sure, he was a 5-star, all of that, great. He's made one start in his collegiate career, and he would be making substantially more in NIL than anybody else on your roster.
Yes. Crazy.
You tell me how you think that's going to pan out.
Yeah, that was my whole point of my rant. I just said, like, that they have to warrant the respect when they walk in. And I think OU's done a really good job of bringing in guys that the more, because there was the podcast on the prairie, right? Like Danny Stutzman and Jaron Kinnick were even talking about, there's guys that come in on the portal that make more than the ones that have been around campus. But you want to know what they said? They said there's some guys that deserve it when they come in. You're like, okay, well, I get that what he did at that previous school. Okay, I get it. So we're trying to better our team, bring him in, do what you got to do. But if you got a guy that has one start and 11 appearances in 3 years, and you're paying him more than Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman and Woody Washington and Jackson Arnold and Sawchuk and all the guys, Jacob Sexton, the guys that have actually proven themselves on the field, like, what are we doing? What that right there is the microcosm, and the biggest issue I have with the NIL part is that there's schools that are willing to pay whatever just so they can fill a spot. And at the end of the day, there are a lot of times you end up paying $750,000 for a dude that is not even going to start for you. And you end up 7-5 or 8-4, and you're asking yourself why. Well, because the locker room isn't cohesive, because you're paying dudes that aren't worthy of it. And that's why I like how Venables does things, Parker. That's why I like the way Bama and Georgia and Ohio State and all you don't see like the Oklahomas of the world, the Texas, the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Bamas. They don't go out and grab 25 new portal guys every year, right? Like Oklahoma had to start, but now that they have their high school, they're in their third, they're in their third cycle of bringing in high school guys. They don't have to do that anymore, Parker. Like, they've had 3 top 10 classes. They had the number 6, number 7, number 8 class in the country. Boom, boom, boom. When you do that, you don't have to bring in a bunch of overpaid transfer guys. You can nitpick and bring in guys that are going to come in and help you right off the bat, or potentially contribute or make your locker room better or your roster better. But you don't have to go out and overpay for a dude that's got 11 appearances and 1 start. You don't have to. And I know that some fans are like, well, there's only so many guys on the roster. Like, they're bringing in 3. So they got six guys returning scholarship offensive linemen. You got 3 transfers coming in. That's 9. You got 5 freshmen coming in. That's 13. 13 offensive linemen. 13 offensive linemen, right? No, it's 14. 14 offensive linemen. See, that's why I'm in journalism and I didn't go to math. So 14 offensive linemen. So 14 offensive linemen, Parker. You bring in 1 more. That's 15. That's 3 sets of 5. That's a rotation of 3. You're 3 deep at all the positions, potentially. That's how you want it. That's a perfect spot. And if they can get Zalance hurt, oh my God, if they can get Zalance hurt, you've just made your offensive line really, really good. But even if they don't, Parker, what's your thoughts on that? Because I think that they're going to be okay. I do. I think they're going to be okay. They're not going to be what they would be with Zalance hurt. And I get the disappointment in that. But at the same time, they're not going to be like this blah. You saw Bill Bedenbaugh teaching a longtime starter in Spencer Brown. You've got Sexton on the edge, and then you can go grab whoever you want to fit around Everett and Bates at center and throw them in there. Got plenty to choose from.
Sorry, were you waiting for a response from me on that?
Well, yeah, I wanted your response on the offensive line next year.
Well, no, I think I'm not really comfortable projecting or predicting what the starting five looks like, and I think that's okay. I don't feel the need to have a rock solid idea of what it looks like right now because I know how good Bill Bedenbaugh is at his job. And he has made some surprising moves in the past with his personnel. Most notably, I can think about back to 2021, shifting Tyrese Robinson from left guard all the way out to right tackle. And that was a head scratcher to many folks.
I mean, it's a game changer.
It worked. And every single string that Bedenbaugh has pulled for the most part has worked. And so, yeah, I think Febechi Nawawu is going to be an instant impact guy. I think there's going to be good competition at center amongst Josh Bates and Troy Everett, maybe a couple other guys. I think Heath Ozaida has the potential to be a real sleeper. I know he's a guy that plenty of folks internally are high on. And end of the day, I think if you're in a position where you're playing Eddie Pierre-Louis or BJ Brooks or even Daniel Akinkunmi in year one, I'm okay with that. You know, like I don't hate that at all. Having watched those guys up close in person, yeah, they're dudes that are capable of coming in and holding their own in the SEC in year one. Now, I think the hope is you don't have to do that. I think the hope is that you can lean on veterans. And what I do like is that the Sooners have two solid bookends in Jacob Sexton and Spencer Brown to rely on. That should make Jackson Arnold's life a lot easier. But I don't know what the offensive line looks like. I mean, I couldn't give you a projection as to who the five starters are. I mean, I could. I don't know how confident I would feel in it, but you have a multiplicity of guys that are capable of playing several positions. So you have versatility, you have flexibility, you have a ton of experience, and in contrast to that, you have a ton of exciting up-and-comers that are young, not just this incoming freshman class, but a guy like Ozaida that redshirted in year one, a guy like Logan Howland that also redshirted, a guy like Jake Taylor who's going into year three but hasn't really scratched the surface of what he's capable of yet. I think there's plenty of reason to be, even if you're not excited, I think there's plenty of reason to be content with where Oklahoma's at from an offensive line perspective and believe that the pieces are going to be there and that the puzzle is going to end up coming together for Oklahoma in 2024 up front.
Yeah, no, I think that everything's going to come together. I really do. And I don't mean that as in like, I think they're going to be this or that. Like there's a world where Oklahoma's 8-4, 7-5 next year. Like I think fans need to wrap their head around it with that schedule that they have. But there's also a world where Oklahoma's 10-2, 9-3, you know, if things come together. And the odds are University of Oklahoma, things are going to come together more than they are fall apart. That's just the reality of the situation. When you look at, and people want to sit there and they want to harp on transfer portal rankings, right? And Oklahoma not doing this. Did you know that Oklahoma was 4th in 2022 in transfer portal ranking, was 8th last year, and is 16th this year? It's not like they're not recruiting well in the portal. And when you add that and you combine that with 3 straight top 10 high school recruiting classes, Oklahoma will be in the fact that you could have 3 5-stars again this year on top of the 3 5-stars you got last year, on top of the few you got the year before. You could have 7 or 8 5-stars on your roster, and your team talent composite ranking could be in the top 6 or 7 in the country.
Well,
That's how
and
you win a national title.
so, yeah, those numbers you cited, Brandon, 4th in 2022, 8th in 2023, 16th in 2024 in the portal. Some people are going to hear those numbers and they're going to say, well, sounds like OU's trending in the wrong direction in the portal to me. But
They're not getting as many players.
and you don't need as much out of the portal
Huh.
this year as you did last year or the year before that. The Sooners had to overhaul in a major way back in 2022. They had to bring in some significant pieces in 2023. The need wasn't as desperate, if you will, as it was the year before, but there was still a need to bring in some pieces here and there to help win 10 games, which they ultimately did in the 2023 season. And here in 2024, again, I think you've gotten to the point with this roster where, especially on the defensive side of the ball, Brandon, there's enough coming back. There's enough existing talent. There's enough experience that you don't have to mine the portal as devotedly as you did these past couple of years. And so, yeah, it's only natural that you would see that downward trend, if you will, in terms of where Oklahoma ranks, because their needs are not what they were last year, and their needs last year were not what they were the year before. Now, are there a couple guys in this portal cycle that Oklahoma would have liked to have had that they didn't end up with? Certainly, right? Like, if you if you're asking whether Oklahoma is better or worse off with Zalance Hurd on their roster, no one is going to argue with the fact that Oklahoma would be better off with that guy on the roster. But the question becomes, at what cost, right? And so, for the guys that Oklahoma has gotten in the manner in which they've gotten them, I'm pleased with what they've accumulated in the portal here in 2024. And I think heading into the season, they're going to have guys all across the board that are capable of providing adequate competition to their peers on the practice field and putting the Sooners in position to win double-digit games once again in their first year in the SEC. I think the pieces are all there. The question is, does it come together? And that's why I've said many a time, this is the year, Brandon. 2024 is the year where coaching gets magnified more so than it ever has before, because you have a ton of talent coming back. You have
There's no excuse.
a ton of guys that have played a ton of ball. And so, yeah, you're out of excuses, right? And that there may be an explanation if the Sooners don't live up to expectations this fall. The explanation may be, well, they weren't as SEC ready as we thought they were. And that's fine if that's the case. You know what? Okay, whatever. If that's what ends up happening, as long as the wheels don't fall off and you're 4-8, 5-7, as long as that doesn't happen, you take a few lumps year one in the SEC. I don't think anybody's going to fault you for that. There's an accommodation process, a learning curve, if you will. But I certainly think the pieces are there such that if this team does win double-digit games, 10, 11, 12 wins, even for Oklahoma in year one in the SEC, at that point, well, it's a very important year for Brent Venables and his staff, because I don't necessarily know what the expectations are going to be, and I don't think we will know until the portal cycle in the spring is completed and we know what these rosters look like in a tangible sense. But if they fall short of expectations for any other reason than, well, the SEC just kind of punched him in the mouth and there was nothing they could do about it. If there is anything that Oklahoma leaves on the table as a program, if they lose some of the games that they have lost through the first couple of years of the Venables era, in the manner in which they have lost some of them, once again, we see some of those mistakes repeated. That's where you can only really point at coaching. And so, especially in the SEC, man, where you don't get a freebie week to week going up against a coaching staff that is overwhelmed and in over their heads. No, everybody that's coaching in the SEC got that job for a reason. Coaching gets magnified more so than ever before here in 2024.
No doubt. And again, like I said, and even you said the expectation, like there's a world 7-5, 8-4 happens. There is that world. But I think the expectation should be 9-3, 10-2. I guess an 8-4 would be not the end of the world, but it wouldn't be great. And I think fans would be a little worried if that took place. I still think 2025, even with the returns that they have, and even the potential losing a Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman and Woody Washington after the 2024 season, I still think 2025 cumulatively, offense and defense, is where Oklahoma looks to be just downright powerful. Potentially with how they've recruited, and you bring in that recruiting class again in 25 in the transfer portals, and you make that 4 straight top 10, top 8 classes. It's really hard not to view Oklahoma as one of the top teams in the country in 25. But again, 2024, you should expect it with a 12-team playoff. You should expect to be in the. I think the expectation should be, you should be playing in that 12-team playoff.
No doubt.
I think that should be the expectation. So if they don't, it'll be a disappointing season. And I'm saying that right now. You can bring this back if I'm making an excuse later on. I'm saying it right now. That is a disappointing season. And speaking of really good teams, before we close this thing out, OU's playing Kansas in fog. You're going to go to that game.
Well,
super
weather
jealous.
permitting, there's a lot of snow up here. There is a lot of snow up here. So weather permitting, yes, I'll be at that game.
So jealous. That's going to be such a fun atmosphere. OU needs to break the streak. And I think this team can. They can't turn the ball over, man. Like, that is their biggest weakness, is they get out of control sometimes. And they shoot Billy Bowman said it in the Alamo, Oklahoma beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat Oklahoma against TCU as well by turnovers and not covering the perimeter, the 3-point line very well.
Well, and I think TCU,
they're good.
They are good, but I didn't think they played their best game on Wednesday. Like, they gave Oklahoma an opportunity to go and win that basketball game in Schulmeyer Arena, and the Sooners just didn't take advantage. And I think my big question going forward, Brandon, is I still am unsure whether this team has the interior presence, whether they have the big boys in the paint to be able to hold up against the heavy hitters in the Big 12 on a night when their outside shooting goes cold. And that was the case against TCU. They were not hitting from the perimeter. And when that happens, and there will be games where that happens for Oklahoma. Happens for everybody. There are nights where your shooters just don't have their touch. And so how can you account for those shortcomings from beyond the arc? Well, you got to have strong play in the paint. I think Sam Godwin
needs to stay inside more. he like tries to go out. Like, I get he's a stretch, but dude, you weigh 270 pounds. Get your butt inside. If there's other guys that are handing the ball out there, go throw your weight around and get a rebound or two. And he did in the first half, and Oklahoma was winning. When he stopped doing that and stepped outside, like you just said, Parker, he just went to crap.
Yeah, Sooners got really good guard play. Javion McCollum's a superstar, man. And Otega Owe, Milo Suzanne, even Latrey Darthard. I mean, there's some good pieces there. In the backcourt, that is. Sam Godwin has been nice. Yeah. He's had his moments for Oklahoma. But it can be the same song, second verse, as it was last year, where you get into Big 12 play and you just get dominated inside. I know you're very thankful Tanner Groves is no longer in an Oklahoma uniform, Brandon.
Oh, he was my favorite player. What are you talking about?
Nobody makes Brandon seethe quite like Tanner Groves does. But yeah, that to me is what Oklahoma has to figure out and come up with an answer for, is what do you do on a night when your shooters don't have their touch from beyond the 3-point arc? And can you continue to maintain the same frenetic scoring pace if what you have to do every time up the floor is drive to the basket and make something happen in the key? And if Oklahoma proves that they're capable of that, I don't think there's a team in the Big 12 they can't hang with. If that's something they can't do, that's too much to ask. It's too much to ask for the Sooners to simply pound it out inside on any given evening when their outside shooters just aren't feeling it. Then they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle in Big 12 play.
No doubt. I'm going to say it. OU breaks the streak this weekend.
Wow. You're going there, huh?
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. They got to, man. You can't go out losing 21 straight years at Fog, man. Come on,
Oh, it's a lot
OU.
more than that,
Get
Brandon.
this credit. 21. It was 1993. Oh, it's 31. Oh my God.
Yeah, you're old, Brandon.
31 years. Yeah, 31 years. You got to get it going, guys. Like this, you can't do it. 31 straight years since the last time they won the. They win in Lloyd Noble quite often. They just
Yeah.
can't get out of their own way in the Fog. Break the streak. Break the streak. This is I don't cover them in basketball. I leave that up to Jesse and Brody. So I actually get to have some fun with the basketball program, and between them and the Thunder, I've been pretty happy with basketball here lately. You know, the Thunder won by 62 last night. If you didn't pay attention, 62 points.
A lot of points.
They're good. So yeah, I want them to. I want the streak to end. And Bill Self was the best man in my uncle's wedding. Excuse me. And I was the ring bearer when I was a kid. Little known fact for you guys. Bill Self's been a family friend for a long time. Good guy. Still want him to lose on Saturday. So, anyways, all right. We can cover the junior day real quick. Do you have time to do that real quick?
I don't see why not. I mean,
Are you doing radio today?
What's that?
Are you doing radio today?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. But I was sitting here trying to get out of here so you could go to radio. Okay. Real quickly, junior day. Look, I think when you look at what Oklahoma's bringing in for junior day, they're going to have Jonah Williams is going to be in there. 5-star safety. Brandon Hall once again in on another top 100 safety. So like player that plays a safety position. He is killing it on the recruiting trail. But at the same time, you know, Michael Fasusi, 5-star offensive lineman out of Louisville, teammate of Jaden Hardy, will not be there. But he will be coming in February or March. He said like he's been to Oklahoma like 8 times in the last 4 months. So like this isn't him missing the junior day isn't that big of a deal. I talked to him yesterday for a little bit and he basically said, look, Oklahoma's still way up there on my list. Like I love Coach Bedenbaugh. The school, the program, obviously my close friend Jaden Hardy's there. Like they are still huge on a list. And I would actually put Oklahoma probably the top school. But he wants to go check out some other programs, and you can't hate him for that. And I think, but OU fans are going to hate who he's going to check out. Going to A&M next Saturday, then he's going to Missouri, and then he's going to Oregon on the 27th. So, 3 of OU's thorn in their side programs when it comes to recruiting. But at the end of the day, when you look at the fact that he's from the DFW area, to look at the fact that he's got a lot of friends in Norman, you look at the fact that he's very close with Coach Bedenbaugh, very close with Latrell and Joe John Finley and DeMarco, very close with Jaden Hardy, obviously, his former safety teammate at Louisville that is signed with Oklahoma and that is already on campus. There's a lot to like if you're Oklahoma, and I still think Oklahoma leads. It's so early, though. I think you guys need to understand that in January, don't get your hopes up unless they're an Oklahoma kid. Then you can kind of understand that if Oklahoma leads for an Oklahoma kid, the chances are they're going to Oklahoma, no matter what, no matter the drama later on. Kid's probably going to sign with Oklahoma. DFW is similar to that, Parker, to an extent, but it's not quite. Like, you look at the DFW area, and generally, if Oklahoma leads for a guy, they get him, right? Like, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, generally, I would say that's true.
But it's not a guarantee like the state of Oklahoma,
sure.
Because it's still the state of Texas, even though they consider DFW the state of Oklahoma when they come to recruiting. Like, that's an in-state kid to them. You're 2 hours away. That's in-state. So, I like that. Lamont Rogers is supposed to be there. The other 5-star offensive lineman is supposed to be there. Obviously 5-star wide receiver Caleb Cunningham is supposed to be there. Like this junior day on the 27th is going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big deal. You're going to have a lot of commits in there, and you're going to have a lot of guys come in there. I would expect 1 or 2 commits to pop, just my guess. When you get, 6 or 7 commits already bearing down on you, right? This early, and granted, most of them are from the state of Oklahoma, and you bring in some top talent, generally the vibe is good enough that 1 or 2 pops, right? Like that's kind of the sense that we're getting. So I don't know who that's going to be, but Oklahoma has what, the second or third ranked class in the country, fourth ranked class in the country in 25 right now.
Number
And
4.
number 4. And this is a class that when it's all said and done, I kind of expect them to be right there in the end, right between that 1 and 5 range. I think this is going to be Venable's first top 5 class, Parker. And it's because the state of Oklahoma is stupid talented in 2025.
It is, but Oklahoma's already got so much of the state committed. It's like, well, who's left? Tristan Haynes.
Well,
I
you got
guess?
Webb, you got Nixon. Who else did you say?
Tristan Haynes. I
Tristan
guess
Haynes.
CJ Nixon is still uncommitted. Yeah.
Yeah, you got three guys that Oklahoma could go pull that I think will be pushing for 4-star and or is already 4-star. 2 of the 3 are guaranteed 4 stars, in Nixon and Haynes. And I think both of them will probably be Sooners at the end of the day. But I mean, when's the last time Oklahoma had 7 or 8 4-stars in one class?
You're talking about the state, just to
Yeah, the state of
clarify.
Oklahoma. Yeah.
God, yeah, it's been a minute. It's been a
It's a
minute.
great class, man.
Usually you get 4 or 5, and that's about it. But this is a great class in the state of Oklahoma, and credit to Venables and his staff for making it an early priority to lock down all the top dudes in state, because they have a nucleus in 2025 already, and that was something that they didn't have at this time a year ago with the 2024 class. They didn't get their first 2024 commitment until the end of March with Jeremiah Newcomb, and here you are. It's January 12th, and they've got 9 pledges already, 6 of them from within state lines.
Yeah, no, I think this class is got a chance to be. I think it's going to be top 5 when it's all said and done. I really do, particularly because the DFW is so loaded in 25 as well, and in particular on the offensive line, where this past season, Bedenbaugh had to really go out across the world to go grab offensive linemen, literally. He went across the pond to London to grab one of them, and grabbed one out of Mississippi, grabbed one out of Florida. Trying to think, one out of Oklahoma and one out of California. Like that he literally crossed one border to the next, one ocean to the next to go grab guys. All 5 of those commits that he got in 2024. He doesn't have to do that in 25. He's got, Webb up in the Tulsa area at Bigsby. You've got that he hasn't got an offer yet, but I do think he'll eventually get an offer. He's one of the top offensive tackles in the country in 2025. Then you've got obviously Lamont Rogers. You got Michael Fasusi in the DFW area. You've got what's his name? Already committed to Oklahoma.
Owen Hollenbeck.
Oh my gosh, Owen Hollenbeck, yes. And then you've got Denton Ryan's offensive tackle.
Marcus Garcia. Is that who you're thinking of? Denton Ryan? No, you're thinking of Ty Haywood. Ty Haywood,
yeah. When you said Marcus, I was like, what? No, Ty Haywood. So generally doesn't have to really go more than 3 hours away to go grab his offensive line class if he can pull all those guys in. And those are all very highly ranked guys. So it's going to be a little bit less of a strain for him. It's going to be kind of like what Oklahoma did on the defensive line class, right? In 2024, where they didn't really have to go that far because the defensive line class was so loaded. And guess what? The D-line class is loaded again in the state of Oklahoma and Texas. So, and even in Missouri and Kansas. So Oklahoma really only has to cast a net, 6-7 hours away, and they can go grab their D lineman as well. So I think that's outside of, I think, Isaiah Campbell, which I think Oklahoma's in a good spot for, out of North Carolina. So um, it's just, I think at the end of the day, that's where this class is going to be the strength, is the fact that I think the trenches again, Oklahoma's gotten really lucky in 24-25 to have the trenches be so close as far as the defensive line goes. And this year in 25, O-line, and even in 26, Parker, like there's some really good D linemen in the state of Oklahoma, right? In 26 and in 26 in the state of Texas. So it's Oklahoma's gotten lucky. Moving into the SEC, they needed to build up their trenches. And the fact that the two states that they generally go recruit have started to develop better D linemen has been a very, very big plus for them on the recruiting trail as far as that. Because, Oklahoma's always going to get good corners and safeties and linebackers and wide receivers and quarterbacks and running backs. Like, that's what they've always done. Mm-hmm. It's been the D-line and O-line that, well, particularly the D-line, that has always been the struggle, right? And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of the emphasis in these junior days, is Oklahoma's going to try to narrow things down and really bring in a top-tier class in the trenches once again, because it's needed in the SEC. This isn't the Big 12 anymore, Parker. It's not the Big 12. And you already see that with some of the names they're bringing in, right? Lamont Rogers, Jaden Woods, I think, is coming in. What's his name from Balabu or Baluba? How do you say his last name?
Babalola, Andrew Babalola.
Andrew Babalola is coming in as well. So, like, this is a really good offensive line and defensive line class for Oklahoma to continue to build on to the roster and build depth. So I think that's what you're going to start seeing. Before we go, do you have anything that maybe, like, have you been texting anybody on Herd or anything before we get out of here? Just one last little quip.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can count on it being Oklahoma. I think it's a pleasant surprise if it is Oklahoma. But again, I think there is enough money on the table for him at Tennessee and Ole Miss that it would frankly be surprising to me if he did not pick Tennessee or Ole Miss. And we gave some context earlier in the podcast for just how much money that is. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a 19-year-old to say no to. And so if Bill Bedenbaugh's pitch hits home, great. It's just not something I'm banking on right now.
No doubt. No doubt. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast for the weekend. Be sure you're subscribed to this channel because we got a Casey Thompson interview coming. We're setting up the time. It's supposed to be interviewing tomorrow around 4 p.m., which is a Saturday. That's the goal right now. If it changes, we'll make a note on OU Insider VIP board. But that's where we're headed right now. So hopefully by Sunday we will have another video up for you guys, and that we have videos up daily. We're gonna have coverage of the basketball interviews, all that type of stuff. Jesse, Brody are gonna have their podcast up in the paint. That's also on our OU Insider YouTube channel. So that is where you should be. Subscribe. We've got daily content coming for you guys. If you like college football, college basketball, we're going to be covering softball. We're going to be covering baseball. Like, all that's going to be right here on this OU Insider YouTube channel for you guys, and all the recruiting coverage. And I Parker, we've talked about this a little bit. We may just need to do like a 10 or 15 minute recruiting every few days, just like video during the off season, just to keep things going and keep people interested a little bit in that as well. So maybe that's another idea we can throw out there. If you guys have ideas, throw it out there in the comments. We read them. So throw them out there. We'll see if we can make it work for you guys. But we're always trying to do the best we can to make sure you guys are entertained and kept up to date on this YouTube channel. But also, just know that a lot of the information that we don't talk about, and there's a lot, there's a lot, it's on the OU Insider VIP board. And there is several thousands, close to 5 figures of members over there on the VIP board right now. and we have a lot of recruiting updates. We got a chat going. We've got transfer updates. We've got team updates. We got depth chart talk. We've got basketball talk, basketball recruiting, softball talks going on over there right now. Baseball talk starting to heat up a little bit over there right now. All of that is OU coverage for you, and VIP coverage behind the scenes. We're gonna have a lot of off-season stuff for you guys, team stuff. Who's doing well? Who's doing what in the off-season? Spring football, all the junior days, all the official visits, the spring practices, all the team notes, the VIP notes, all the behind the scenes stuff over there on the VIP board right now. $9.99 a month, or you can sign up right now, $99.95, which is, I believe, isn't that like $8 a month potentially? Run around $8 a month if you sign up for a whole year, which will get you all the way through OU's first season, which will get you both. We'll get you the National Signing Day next year for 2025. We'll get you the inaugural SEC season. We'll get you all the way through all the official visits, all the offseason, the SEC media days, all that. And plus, you get to talk to us on a daily basis. We're debating and talking to you guys every day on there. So come join us, OU Insider VIP. All right, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider VIP, or not VIP, OU Insider podcast, Sooners podcast. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. Have a blessed day.